Diamonds in the 1930s were often found in places where money changed hands. Banks, real estate offices, savings and loans, and places where a little illegal gambling was going on. We love Miami Beach. Miami Beach has been a playground, a welcoming place for people from all over the world since the turn of the 1900s.
Therefore, when you come and play in our city, please, we ask you to leave it as you found it. Beautiful, don't go crazy, don't be doing all that stuff. It's just, there is a lot of people, families, older people, babies, children. There is all sorts of people living here. So please, leave our city the way you found it. The video is about to start. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. There we go! This beautiful bar. Would this bar be here if...
These buildings, the Art Deco that Miami Beach is so famous for, was part of the mid-1930s, the second wave of tourism developed here in Miami Beach. It was for a more budget-minded traveler, it was post-depression, and the buildings had a totally different appeal and demographic. A beautiful bar like this would have never been built into one of these buildings because during the 1920s and into the early 1930s, drinking alcohol was illegal. The United States had a law called Prohibition. The sale and manufacture of alcohol was strictly prohibited. But illegal alcohol and illegal gambling was a big part of the appeal
even
of
like
why
today.
to come to Miami Beach. We know that Carl Fisher totally ignored prohibition in the 1920s, as did many of the wealthy hotel owners. Carl Fisher used his yacht from the Vanderbilts to sail over to Bimini, get illegal rum, and bring it to sell and serve at his posh hotels. Well, even though prohibition was repealed and alcohol was illegal again in the 1930s, hotels like this wouldn't have built a big posh bar so publicly visible because, first of all, being secret is fun, and also the temperance movement, those church ladies, they were still watching, and it was considered kind of bad form to drink too openly in public. So they would hide the bars away into secret locations like upstairs, around the back. But in the terrazzo floors, the floor technique that these buildings are known for, they would put little secret messages. And we see right outside this beautiful bar,
as we're showing you right now,
a bar shape in the floor that would have told the guests of the 1930s that even though you don't see a bar, doesn't mean there isn't one here.
Diamond floors.
Diamond floors. This is what I was talking about. Diamonds in the 1930s were often found in places where money changed hands. Banks, real estate offices, savings and loans, and places where a little illegal gambling was going on. And we know that there was a gambling syndicate held here in this hotel. And we talked about how they would use the trucks from the Washington storage facility if they thought they were going to be raided, and they had to hide the evidence for a little while the police were here. So there you have the diamonds, and now we know.
This is a little house that I always go by, and I wonder, what is it? And you know, the material that it's made of, it looks very familiar to the seawall that we showed earlier.
And you're exactly right. That's exactly what this is. This is that same material. It's the fossilized oolitic limestone. And this little house is one of the only two we have left that were built using this material. This house was built in 1918.
Wow.
For Avery Smith, the ferry boat driver.
And it's been kind of many things. It's been hair salons, it's been, I don't know, like I've seen so many things that it's been abandoned or not, because it looks beautiful. It's been available for years.
Well, it's had kind of an up and down history. It was used, it was not used, it became very derelict at one point. It was slated for demolition, but the Preservation League got involved.
Yes.
And now, thankfully, it has been restored and is being prepared for a new tenant.
Nice.
This is Muscle Beach. Muscle Beach evolved rather organically, just a group of local exercise enthusiasts around the 1960s started gathering here in Lummis Park to exercise, and over time it became so popular that now the city has organized it with all this very nice exercise equipment. It gathers quite a crowd on a good day. This beautiful sculptural exercise equipment here on Muscle Beach was commissioned by the city of Miami Beach a few years ago as part of our Art in Public Spaces project. So it's very artistic and yet very functional as well. Makes it fun to look at for everyone. I love this piece. This is my personal favorite. It actually has a name. This is called the Jaguar Tree. And I think it's just gorgeous.
And here we are in another beautiful marina. All Miami Beach is surrounded by beautiful, luxurious properties and marinas that Julia and I get to enjoy on a daily basis.
It is really a luxury and so beautiful. Waterfront property is and always has been valuable and desirable. In the 1920s, during that first wave of development here, the advertising done by the Lummis brothers, the Collins family, and Carl Fisher really paid off. People were anxious to come here, buy property, and the population soared. There are stories that are told that they were even selling shoreline property, waterfront property in the middle of Biscayne Bay that did not exist. Miami Beach is a small island. We didn't have a lot of shoreline. So they came up with a plan to build many, many artificial islands almost covering Biscayne Bay. Back then, there was virtually no environmental protection laws. So they could do pretty much whatever they wanted. And because land prices were up, the population was exploding, advertisement was all over the country about Miami Beach, developers from all over came to cash in. And two companies, the Shoreland Development Company and the Venetian Island Company, both came to Miami Beach with the idea that they would build a string of artificial islands across Biscayne Bay. This little CVS here is the site of the infamous chainsaw massacre scene of the 1983 Hollywood blockbuster Scarface. Big names, big money, big stars, Brian De Palma, Oliver Stone, Al Pacino came to Miami Beach, and unfortunately, they were not welcomed with open arms. The local Cuban community was a little offended by the fact that their people were being portrayed by the star of this film as violent, criminal, drug-dealing gangsters. So it was our political machine here that flew into action, and they used their voices, their political connections, their radio station, and made it very uncomfortable for the production to carry on, which is why it only filmed 3 scenes here. The rest was all done in Los Angeles. The 3 little white hemispheres there on the vertical left of this building are all that's left of the 1950s historic apartment building that was used in the opening scenes of the Chainsaw Massacre of Scarface.
I always loved this building too, like all the buildings in Miami Beach, which now is the headquarters of the LGBTQ and the O Cinema, which is an artistic kind of
An
movie.
art house, art
Yes.
house cinema, yeah.
So anyway, was it always this or?
No. The real story of this building starts much earlier. This building was built right after the big hurricane of 1926, the big blow. Just like we needed a storage facility for all the people's belongings to withstand the hurricanes to come, this building replaced the small Miami Beach City Hall that was demolished by the storm. Carl Fisher commissioned this tall, opulent building, which was very unique for its time, because he wanted it to be a beacon of hope for the people of Miami Beach and, most importantly, those investors and wealthy tourists. He wanted them to know that Miami Beach would rise again and we would overcome this natural disaster and we would be a great place to come back to. So this put a cap on the 1920s hurricane season with an exclamation point. The 1920s were hard on Miami Beach because right at the height of our development, the 1920s, the roaring 20s, the rich people were coming, boom, along came a hurricane. Then, right on the heels of that hurricane, there was a disaster in the harbor. A four-masted ship went down right across the entryway of the harbor.
Wow.
So nothing in and nothing out, which meant no construction materials, no supplies of any kind. That was a huge blow to a construction boom that we were experiencing. Then, right after that, 2 more hurricanes and the Great Depression. So we went through a period of where there was no money or interest in rebuilding. And it wasn't until really almost 10 years later, the mid-1930s, when we started to have that construction boom again. There was a lot of money invested here in Miami Beach. During the Depression, the government tried really hard to get things going. And what that did was they brought about a rise in the power of labor unions. American workers were making more money. The concept of the weekend was created during that time period.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Up until that time, people worked 7 days a week. But as a result of the New Deal and the government's efforts to get the economy moving during the Depression, workers started making more money. The work week was reduced, so they were working less hours. They got pensions, they got Social Security. So now they had a little bit more money and the ability to do something that they never thought they would be able to do. For the first time in history, a working class or middle class American could go on a holiday. And where did they want to go? The famous Miami Beach. However, unlike the first wave of tourists, the second wave of tourists were budget-minded people. They were traveling on tight budgets. And it was during that period, the 1930s construction boom, when all of these little historic buildings that Miami Beach is so famous for sprang up. And it was during that period when the Art Deco design style swept Miami Beach. And the working class tourists came because these were small, affordable, budget-minded buildings. And things were good. Miami Beach grew because workers from all over the country came here to Miami Beach to capitalize on the jobs, the construction work, the hotel work, the restaurant work. There were jobs in Miami Beach and people flocked here and things were great. The party rocked. Unfortunately, nothing good lasts forever. And along came 1941. America enters World War II. So now, what happens to a city and an economy built on tourism when tourism ends? Behind us is the bridge that leads to the Venetian Causeway, that early bridge that was built on the foundation of the Collins Bridge. Now it links all these artificial islands that were built during the 1920s when they were trying to sell shore waterfront property. The only natural island in this part of Biscayne Bay is Bell Island. All the rest were man-made. And it was a great plan. However, over time, things changed. And along came the big hurricane of 1926. Then came the Depression. Then came a few environmentalists that started to have concerns about what we were doing to Biscayne Bay. And because of these conditions, many projects were ended or never completed. And one of them was one of the islands that was supposed to be built here.
The Isola of Lolando.
Yes, that project was begun, but never finished. But interestingly, the pilings, the big pole-like wooden structures that were sunk into the swampy bay still exist. And you can see them along the shore, and many people wonder what they are. Well, they were the beginning of an artificial island that was never completed. And yet, there is an upside to it. Despite the fact that they are an extreme navigational nautical hazard, because of that, they've become a really great, pristine oasis, a paradise for kayakers and sea life, dolphins, sea rays, manatees, and all different kinds of fish. So something good from something bad.
Behind us, we have one of my favorite artificial man-made islands, which is called the Monument Island, which was another thing by Carl Fisher.
Carl Fisher had his hand in many of those projects of the 1920s. We know that he was instrumental in beginning the dredging of Biscayne Bay for development, primarily boat racing. And all of those artificial islands are part of that 1920s development. And Carl Fisher financed for $125,000 the building of Monument Island. And then later in 1939, he gave it as a gift to the city of Miami Beach.
Woo-hoo. Don't forget to tune in to our next video because it's going to be interesting, all these segments. In the next one, we're going to talk about what happens to Miami Beach from the Second World War all the way up to the preservation in 1979, right?
Right.
Yes.
Great story.
So please don't forget to tune in to Gustavo's World. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Hit the like button, comment all you want, and share it in all your social media. Thank you very much. And thank you, Julie, my great friend, for always being here with us. And we have so much more with her. You don't understand. It's going to be so much fun.